Straight back to the Semenya story. Support has been pouring in from across the globe for the athletes' battle with the IAAF. Here at home, the hashtag #HandsOffSemenya has flooded social media, and everyone from political leaders to the Springboks and Cricket South Africa standing with Semenya. Her biggest backer, the Department of Sport and Recreation, is supporting her legal battle. It's furious it's even come to this. Earlier I sat down with Alex Moemi, Director General of Sport and Recreation. Watch this. It's very good to have you with us. I'm just wondering where South African sport stands on the legal process that's happening in Switzerland at the moment.
Good evening, Jane, and good evening to all the viewers of your show on the NCA. In short, as you are aware, this matter is not a new matter. Prior to when earlier it raised its ugly head, the South African government, together with South African sport officials, were quite firm on the matter back then. It has come back again, and once more we pronounced our stance that we are opposed to the regulations. We think that they are unnecessary, and we think that they are unfair and quite discriminatory. And we are opposed to them not purely simply on the issues of fairness alone, but we also believe that it is important that sports itself lead by example. And sport as a great unifier, not just here at home but globally, should set the correct standards of morality. And more so, in a world where patriarchy is still quite dominant, women's sport needs to be given a much more fair chance for it to operate.
What sort of impact do you think this could have on women's sport?
Well, quite negative. Look, we have the opinion that women's sport is not yet on par with male sport. And our government, and I think governments all over the world, are doing their best to try to bring women's sport on parity and to achieve gender parity in sport. This will have helped us take one step forward and 3 steps backwards. And we think the IAAF, athletics being such a dominant sport within the IOC bouquet, it will actually reverse many gains of many women who have asserted themselves on the track and in the field, and who have done extremely well to become role models to young girls.
Talk us through what we are seeing in the court at the moment and what it is exactly that the IAAF wants.
Well, if the IAAF has its way, women will be discriminated against based on how much testosterone they have in their body. Here we are not talking about induced testosterone, which is what you may take and apply it on yourself. We are talking naturally occurring testosterone within your own body. Clearly, if they have their way, women must then be segregated on the basis of that, and a determination of how much you have testosterone in your own body naturally occurring should then determine whether you compete with men or women. And we think that this is quite ridiculous, and we are also wondering what methodology will the IAAF employ to clearly come forth and say, we will determine your testosterone levels in this manner, because that speaks to informed consent.
And force it down if necessary.
Well, which is a problem, because privacy issues have to come up. Informed consent, if any doctor or anybody must touch your body, you actually have got to give permission for that to happen. What enforcement would it be there, and what manner of application would the rules, the new rules then be applied, and in what way?
I mean, it seems barbaric, doesn't it?
It does. We are modernizing slavery. We are actually civilizing cruelty.
Now, talking about privacy, she's also talking about confidentiality issues and that they've been broken. What do you know of that?
Well, as you may have seen, the lawyers there have argued strongly that the confidentiality rules that binds parties to the case, these are rules that are applicable to anybody who brings a case there, have been broken, and the court has agreed with us and has allowed us actually to also issue our own statement.
By naming the witnesses.
By naming the witnesses, and basically from the witnesses and the profile of the witnesses, basically you can determine the core arguments and the legal arguments that were likely to put then the medical arguments. And we think that they have been quite unfair on us, knowing that we have respected the rules of the court up until now to the end, and we intend to respect those rules. And we want to call upon them not to act as a bully, but to respect the rules of the game, and that not to change the rules as the game is on. So We would insist, legally so, within that court, that those rules be enforced and that where necessary punitive measures be put against the IAAF.
Now, it's not just Caster who is facing this. There are many other athletes, all, surprisingly, African. Do you think this is a case of bad sportsmanship, bad losers?
We believe so, and I'll tell you why. Their own evidence and their own research that they say they rely upon indicates that the sports or distances of athletics where a female with differences of sexual development tend to benefit from additional testosterone will include 400 meters to a mile, 400-meter hurdles, 800 meters, 1,500 meters, they say pole vault and hammer throw. But when the IAAF brings these regulations, somehow miraculously they do not include the hammer throw, they do not include the pole vault, and they target only these other distances that supposedly are run by Caster Semenya and many African athletes. And we think that this is quite bad. It's really bad that if indeed this was about fairness and preventing those with undue benefit or undue advantage, then you should have included also pole vault and also all of that. But we suspect that because those sports, pole vault as well as hammer throw, are not dominated by African athletes, this is why this happens. And as you may also have seen from the list of witnesses that they are put in the European universities, and we think that this is quite upset.
Yeah, it smells wrong, doesn't it?
It does.
Now, Caster's had a lot of support from South Africans. Is this enough?
Well, we are mobilizing the whole globe, and we are mobilizing everybody. A number of people like LeBron James in the US, many other athletes all over the world, former athletes like Martina Navratilova and so on, they have all come out in support of Caster. We are calling on all global organizations in human rights area and in the empowerment of women and gender equality to not be silent. In fact, it's apt to quote the words of Martin Luther King Jr. when he said that in the end we will not have to remember the words of our enemies, but we'll remember the silence of our friends in the times of need.
The 2019 South African budget speech coverage is sponsored by Standard Bank, your trusted financial partner in corporate and investment banking. Standard Bank, moving forward.
Tito Mboweni will deliver his maiden budget speech on Wednesday. The finance minister is facing pressure from many sectors of the economy. It seems the health system needs some intensive care. Malangalo Boy spoke to a doctor who's worked in public health care for years. He's requested that we protect his identity.
How would you describe the public healthcare system in this country?
It's in a state of dilapidation. Basically, I'm not going to mince my words, it's in a state of dilapidation.
The public healthcare system caters for 45 million people. That's according to the 2017 figures from Stats SA. It's a sector that's heavily criticized. So, what's wrong with it?
If you look at the nurse-to-patient ratio, doctor-to-patient ratio, it's not synonymous with that of the World Health Organization, one. Two, staffing. I mean, there's a gross shortage of everyone within the healthcare sector, so they ought to make available more funds for staff. Medications, I mean, it is rather disheartening to realize that more often than ever, there are shortages of medication in the country. So those two, I think they're right at the top. And last but certainly not least, and looking to infrastructure and so forth.
In 2018, over 200 billion rand was set aside for public health care. District health services got 90 billion rand. 38 billion rand to central health services. Provincial hospital services received 34 billion rand. Facility management and maintenance received 8.5 billion rand.
One cannot point at anything good about whatever money was given to the healthcare sector. there's so much wrong that it is difficult to pick up any good, if any, for that matter. I mean, if you look at the recent cancer scandal in KZN, so where are those billions? I mean, the provinces, for instance, Eastern Cape, I mean, how many oncologists does Eastern Cape have?
These are the things he hopes the finance minister will address when he delivers his budget speech.
Money should be directed to infrastructure first and foremost. Secondly, well, the infrastructure, it includes equipment. Secondly, medication. And lastly, remuneration of people on time. As you can see at the moment, currently there's doctors, I mean interns, commissars, etc., that are not paid appropriately.
But will Mboweni deliver? Malungelo Pui, Johannesburg.
$1.5 billion lost in one weekend and no elections. Nigeria's crisis up next, but first here's a look at your international weather forecast.